I'm delighted to have with me today David Jenyns, the founder and author of Systemology. And David is live from Melbourne, Australia. So, David, good morning to you.
Hey, Mark, an absolute pleasure to be here.
Okay, I just want to quickly talk about Systemology, of course, with you, David. And my first question today is what inspired you to develop Systemology?
I had, like many business owners, read a lot of the classics when it comes to business, like Traction and Scaling Up and Built to Sell and Work the System. And a lot of these books, they all cite the idea of systems and processes and how important they are in business. So I felt like I knew it was important, but I just didn't know how. Where do I start? What are the first few systems that I put in place? How do I get my team on board? I was really looking for the system for creating systems. And that was kind of really what inspired me. I thought, well, it doesn't exist. So I'm going to go ahead and write the book that I wish I had when I got started.
Excellent. And would you mind just outlining the broad concepts of the Systemology framework?
Yeah. So there are 7 stages to it. The first stage is define, and that's all about identifying the first 10 to 15 systems that you document first. Then the next stage is assign. That has to do with identifying, well, where does that knowledge currently already exist? Oftentimes it exists in the heads of your best team members and in your own head as well. So you want to figure out where that knowledge is. Step number 3 is we extract. So that's all about then getting that IP out of the heads of those team members and into some transferable form, whether that's a video or a written down checklist or a process. It's just about extracting it. And then step number 4 is organize. That has to do with centrally storing all of that knowledge, effectively building a knowledge source for the business where all of your documentation and how-to information is stored. So there's a central source of truth. Then the next stage is integrate. That's about getting your team on board and making sure that there's buy-in, because you can have great systems documented, they can be organized really well, but unless your team follows the process, then it's not really worth anything and doesn't work anyway. So you have to get the team on board, and that's what that step 5 is about. Step 6 is about scale. So when we think about step number 1, it's, well, where do we start? It's the first 10 to 15 systems, but to scale, you're going to need more systems documented. You'll have to think about HR systems and finance systems and management systems and operational systems. So step number 6 is really about identifying those and working towards what I call minimum viable systems. What is the minimum number of systems required for your business to run without key person dependency? And then the last step is optimize. And that's where we start to put a dashboard in place and look to improve efficiencies and re-engineer systems and processes. That last idea with step number 7 is actually what makes Systemology quite unique from a lot of the other process improvement methodologies. A lot of the other methodologies pre-assume that you have a process that you're looking to improve, whereas Systemology is actually the step before. It's more like process capture. We think about what you're currently doing and we make that repeatable, because you can get tremendous wins just by making your business repeatable. So they're the 7 stages of Systemology: define, assign, extract, organize, integrate, scale, and optimize.
And that's absolutely wonderful because the way I look at it is that as a business goes from startup to growth phase and then into enterprise phase, it starts to run into trouble during that growth phase, doesn't it? And certainly it cannot get into the enterprise phase and maximize value without systems and processes that are robust enough. And as you say, in the growth stage, that reliance on the founders of the business and key operators of the business You with a big enterprise, simply you cannot run it that way of hoping that one person has a good day, can you? So it's a wonderful framework, and I was really inspired when I read the book. To be fair, and I've read all the greats like you have. You mentioned some of them, Good to Great and Traction, and of course, and finally, I guess, what did it feel like when Michael Gerber, of course, legendary author of the E-Myth, when his PA called you to say that Michael wanted to speak to you urgently? How did that feel, David?
It felt quite surreal, to be honest, because prior to that point, I had no contact with Michael and his team, and it was completely out of the blue for me. And it was quite amazing to go from where I was and working really closely with Michael on a fantastic project to launch the last book in his E-Myth series called Beyond the E-Myth, and getting that experience of a lifetime. And then at the end of the project, it almost felt like, and you'll read about it in the Systemology book, like the baton was being passed. And Michael had said, you've effectively written the how-to guide of the E-Myth. So yeah, extremely surreal. And I just followed that rabbit hole to see where it would end. And it was a magical carpet ride and definitely a memory I'll cherish forever.
Which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I was very, very lucky to be able to work personally with Michael twice in the UK. So we flew him across. And I think we both agree that he has an absolutely fantastic brain. And
Yes, he's
therefore, for him to recognize the work in systemology has to tell the world a lot. And that's no
yes.
discredit to you. I mean, what you've done is wonderful. And by Michael contacting you, it said that. So I know you're a modest guy, David, but I've got to say, you really have taken over the baton, and it's great that Michael recognised that. So with that, I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to record this, David.
An absolute pleasure. And I wish all the delegates all the best for the event.
Thank you very much indeed.